Hi friends, David here from Learn Stage Lighting, and in today's video we're looking at this guy. What is it? It's the Elation Fuze Profile. I thought it would be a good idea after I recently reviewed the ADJ Focus Profile to take a look at kind of the yang for its yin, the Elation Fuze Profile, and do a little comparison. I really wish that I would have been able to get the two in the room together, but timing just didn't work out for that maybe in the future. However, both of these fixtures have a lot of overlap and some really unique strengths that I think set them apart and make this interesting. So what are we looking at here? First of all, this is the Fuze profile from Elation. It's got a couple really good things going for it, and it's a lot of things actually. Including the price. So compared to the Focus Profile, the biggest differences between these two, just to give you a comparison, is they're both full framing fixtures with full color mixing. They're both relatively quiet. This Fuze, in fact, is very quiet. And they offer a lot of the same features, but one of the main differences is that the Fuze series fixtures, the Fuze Profile and Spot, they use a 305 watt red, green, blue, mint, amber array of LEDs. The Focus Profile from ADJ, hopefully I've gotten those names right every time in here. The Focus Profile has a white source with CMY color mixing. Now the difference between these two as we get into that is that with the Fuze, if you look at the two photometric reports and you compare them in white, the Fuze does not look as bright. And technically, it's not. However, if you're using this primarily for gobo projections and colors on objects, especially deep colors, then you're going to get more color brightness out of the Fuze. So the question is, what's the deal with this Fuze profile and what do we think about it? So I've got this unit on, it's been on for a few minutes, and we've got it projecting on the wall here. We'll quickly just go and show you its movement speed, so you can begin to see here, we'll switch to our other camera as well, that for a bigger mover, you know, a larger scale mover for something of this size that's a profile, it moves at a pretty good pace. It's not overly slow, but if you've used a lot of the fixtures that these compare to, the older fixtures, then you'll realize, you know, for a fixture this size with this many features in it, its movement speed is really reasonable. We're going to go ahead and turn it off and stop it real quick. Let it cool down for a second while we talk about the physical. So it's made out of a really nice plastic. It's got pan and tilt locks on the side, and then the tilt lock is down here on the bottom somewhere. Sorry, you can't see that. It has, on the base of the fixture itself, a True 1 input and throughput and DMX 5-pin. On the display side, it's got a really nice full-color touch display with buttons. So when you're entering a DMX address, you can actually enter that number directly. You can also use the up, down, and enter, and there is a backup battery in there so that you can pre-address, pre-set up this unit in the shop before taking it out on a production, okay, without having to plug in the fixture, which is great, and go through a homing sequence and all that, okay? Talk about homing. We'll go ahead and unplug this and plug it back in. So homing from a dead start is pretty quiet, and overall the noise level of the Fuze profile is really good. I'm going to go ahead and give it intensity while we let it start up. And so it's starting, goes through a typical homing process where it checks everything. It makes a little bit of noise. But as I was mentioning, overall, the noise level on the Fuze profile is really reasonable. The loudest parts of it, instead of the fans, are actually some of the features. I find the middle of the gobo rotation speed, the middle of the zoom range, tend to be a little bit more noisy, but nothing was really out of the question for a mover this size. And if you move those parameters slowly, they don't make as much noise. And so that's where I really draw the difference between a fixture that's loud with fan speed versus features. Because if the features are loud, when you move them quickly, chances are you're only going to move features quickly in a louder environment, right? In a music show, even in a church when the worship band's playing. You know, anytime you're moving these features quickly should be a time when it's louder in the space in general, so it's okay that those features make a little bit of noise. But when you've got these sitting in a given single position, say during your preaching, and you got something basic going, maybe a little rotation, this Fuze profile is really, really quiet, and only occasionally do the fans kick in a little, cool off the LEDs, kick back down. But overall, I mean, for a fixture in this range, it's really quiet. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to move it out front and have my Onyx NX Touch in front of me so that I can run through some more features and show you guys really what I think about this guy. Under the hood of the Fuze Profile, there's a lot of great features, and I hope you can see here between our two cameras, we'll switch between the two throughout this video, that with a little bit of atmosphere in the air, there's not a lot because you can still see me really clearly even with this soft light source. With a little bit of atmosphere in the air, you really get a lot out of this fixture. It's got a wide zoom range. It's about somewhere about 5 to 46, I believe, 6 or 8 to 46, somewhere in there. So it can go pretty narrow, it can go pretty wide. It has a prism as well. That's in right now. It's a 3-facet prism that allows you to break up those gobo patterns, and I think it does so nicely with the goal in a profile unit, something with framing shutters, generally being to optimize for projecting on a surface versus that in-air look. Okay, looking forward, we've got some different color options. So we started in magenta, and as I mentioned, where the Fuze really shines is in the colors. Okay, I mean, sure, you take an amber like this and you go a yellowy amber and you mix it in a conventional discharge fixture. Okay, and it's going to look pretty, it's going to look decent. You know, discharge lamps tend to run kind of blue, but yellow is not that saturated, so with CMY it's going to look pretty bright. But when you go to those deeper colors, like red, okay, first of all, look how smoothly that color came in. I mean, sure, I don't have it open, I have a gobo in, but you really don't see the CMY coming in at all. That's a good sign. That's a higher quality build, okay? You know, overall the color fades really smoothly, and deep, deep colors like this red. I mean, on an older fixture, like right now we've got a customer looking at these through Learn Stage Lighting Gear. They have MAC 2K profiles. On paper, the MAC 2K is brighter, but it has a really pronounced hotspot in the middle and then it tapers off. This is a smooth, even field, okay? You can see how good it looks cutting through the haze in the air as well. I know we've got that shot cut a little bit low just to stay out of our video light, but you know, it rocks, right? Looking at some other colors here. Green, nice, deep Kelly green. Looks great in the image as well. I know this camera's a little bit noisy. I think it's doing auto ISO, but it looks really nice, okay? Then we've got whites. So the Fuze Profile, at its default, as a lot of LED-based sources, has a fairly high native color temperature with a good CRI. However, you can go ahead and there's a macro channel to dial in an exact color temperature that you want. We just went through that. So it went from a lower, more ambery color temperature up high, okay? And when you are in that macro, it only has white at that point. If you try to dial in colors with CMY, they won't show up, okay? Now we're looking at gobos. Now this is stuff, I usually gloss through some of these features a little bit quicker because features like the gobos, you can go watch their official video and get a really good idea of what's going on. First Gobo Wheel, rotating, 6 gobos, okay, interchangeable, all right? Nice and open, and you see how stinking bright that is. I actually turned it down too. All right, framing shutters. They are a full curtain framing shutter where you can make a lot of different shapes, okay? So here we see about the biggest square we can make before the edges start rounding. Okay, between the different shutters, there's very little variation. The sides in this are slightly out of focus compared to the top and bottom, but it's not a massive difference. All right, we can make a lot of shapes with a two-sided framing shutter. Most framing shutters, this is similar, kind of have two motors that push in like this, and that's how the Fuze profile works as well. So you can make some different shapes here, and as mentioned, full curtain framing. So we just watch that shutter start on one side, come all the way across to the other side, close it completely. All right, open that guy back up, and you saw there, it came in, it rotated at the same time. So the full shutters, not only do they have two motors each, so they each can rotate and index where you need them, the whole shutter deal assembly can rotate either way as well. Gobo 2, all right, after the shutters. Sorry about getting those out of order. So this is your non-rotating Gobo wheel. As you can see, there are a variety of Gobos here, breakups mostly. They look really good with the Prism or without. They look good projected on surfaces. Overall, being a profile fixture between the two Gobo wheels, the Gobos are definitely more situated towards projection on surfaces, for putting patterns onto surfaces. Now, as we've shown you in the secondary camera, that's not to say they don't look good in the air. You just don't see that through the air look of like really dramatic beams out of this fixture with the standard Gobos. But again, the rotating Gobo are replaceable Gobos, as on most fixtures they are. And so if you are going to use this frequently, in a position where you go, hey, I want to get some more of those really beamy, maybe the cone Gobo, things that have a lot more negative space, a lot more darkness in them, then you can replace some of those. Go ahead and do it. That's your choice. All right, next we want to go in here. We've got a little bit of framing in action. And I just wanted to show you as well some different looks here with focus and how the two Gobo wheels interact. There is also an animation wheel for those water and fire effects. I forgot to mention that before. So here we've got one Gobo soft, then we go ahead and we put in our Prism. I'm going to go pop out that framing shutter real quick. And as we can see, I dim this way down so you can see it. Gobo, nice and soft with the Prism rotating. Everything looks really nice. It's a really clean look. Beam through the air looks solid and awesome, nice and sharp. Then we're going to go ahead, do some color changing. Boom, colors look good. And now we're going to morph. So here we went from focus all the way at full down till we focused on that first Gobo wheel. Okay, now this is a cool Gobo morph effect where you can be on Gobo wheel 2 with the Gobo and come all the way smoothly and focused to the Gobo wheel 1 and change that Gobo seamlessly. Now Gobo wheel 2 is still rotating, so it's kind of like a water effect. You see some animation, some movement there. If you slowed this down, it looks really cool for like a theatrical look where you just want a little bit of movement, but you don't want the full rotating Gobo look. That can be accomplished here. So, whew, that's a lot of information in just a few minutes. What do I think overall about the Fuze profile? It's a really, really well-built, solid unit from our friends at Elation Professional. Okay, this is a unit that we purchased, and this is my opinion as our own. But, you know, if you're looking for a fixture that comes in around that, you know, 10 to 15,000 lumen area. Now, I don't particularly love lumens for a couple reasons, as I talked about earlier, because you know, lumens take into account a couple things. They're the measure of all the light coming out of the fixture, or if it's field lumens, all the light in the field angle of the light. Okay, and the reason why I don't like lumens, though it's a really quick way to compare multiple fixtures together, it doesn't take into account a couple things. It doesn't take into account, for example, let's just go back. It doesn't take into account that at most zoom ranges, this is a really flat field. okay, where it's not all that much brighter in the center to the edges. Whereas some of the fixtures you can compare this against to may have slightly more lumens or a good bit more, but they have a really pronounced hotspot. And so yeah, through the air, it might be a little bit more punchy, but when you get it projected on a surface and you look at, all this area, like the whole, 30, 40% around the outside of the light, that's dimmer. Yeah. And so lumens don't tell the whole story. But what does tell the whole story is the fact that as we look at a fixture like this, we see, okay, good performance in white, good performance on video, looks good overall, has some great gobo patterns, has great colors. You can put a lot together and really get a lot out of this fixture. And I think its biggest selling point and kind of the biggest way to match yourself if the Fuze profile is the right fixture for you is to ask yourself, okay, one, let's look at the brightness, and our experts, myself and others at Learn Stage Lighting Gear, can help you look at that. Look at what you currently have, look at a fixture like the Fuze series, this being the profile, and say, okay, how do these compare just overall light level wise? If the Fuze is in the ballpark, even if it's less than what you currently have on paper, one, if your fixture's aged, it's not as bright as it used to be. And two, color brightness really matters. And the fact that the Fuze is an additive color source means that the color mixing is instant. You don't see any inconsistencies when you bring in the different colors because it's an LED, it's not CMY. But I know I talked about CMY before. My preferred mode for these guys is the CMY emulation mode, where you only have to deal with cyan, magenta, and yellow instead of red, green, blue, mint, and amber. And when you only deal with those three, you can still get probably 90% of the same colors, right? And that's exactly what the manual says. What Elation recommends is they say, hey, with the CMY mode, you are in a CMY emulation. It looks great, but there's just a few colors you can't quite get, but it's way quicker to get there. Okay, so I recommend that mode. If you're interested in the Fuze profile, have any other questions, need any help, let us know either in the comments below, or for a quicker response, shoot us a request over at Learn Stage Lighting Gear. If this is a light that looks interesting to you, we'd love to help you figure out if it's the right one for you. And then we'd love to be your authorized dealer to get that light to you and be able to do it at a personalized price. So if that sounds good, head over to Learn Stage Lighting Gear. We would love to help you. And if you fill out a request and you're looking at this light, we're still going to look at the other lights on the market. Okay, we're still going to want to recommend to you what the best brand and best fixture is for you, whether it's this one or not. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe here, and we'll see you guys in our next video. Thanks.